Welcome to the March edition of the VLab Forum. This is Steve Smith, Director of the VLab, and I'm here with, as usual, John Chattel, our Production Manager for the VLab Forum. We're broadcasting live from downtown Silver Spring, Maryland, NOAA headquarters. Today we've got we're very happy to provide sort of an early view of a new capability of the VLab. So today's VLab Forum is exclusively focused on VLab itself. And what we're going to be talking about is the NOAA projects repository in the VLab. And this is a new capability that we're going to be bringing online and rolling out in the next couple of weeks. So you're getting a kind of preview of it. It's not in our production in the VLab just yet, but it will be. And you'll be getting further guidance in the coming weeks on it. But today you're going to see get an early peek at it. And so I'm going to provide some introductory slides giving you some context for what the projects repository is and what its purpose is. And that's going to be followed up by a demo by Mike Giebler, who is on the VLab staff, and he's the principal developer of this capability. And then we'll have our usual question and answer. So our theme, here in the VLab is focusing on research to operations in the National Weather Service, or research to applications, as it's sometimes called in the NOAA level. So this topic fits right in there. So the question is, what is the NOAA projects repository in the VLab? And on a basic level, it's a web interface that allows NOAA employees to investigate and compare research and development projects that are active in NOAA in order to improve collaboration and research to application situational awareness. And the next slide, I'm going to define what R2A is. But for the moment, the idea is that one of the aspects that Weather Service and NOAA in general has been criticized for by external reviews is that we don't have a good idea about what's going on in the NOAA at the project level in terms of research development. And because of that, we're not doing a good job managing innovation, as the term is sometimes referred to. And because of that, there are sometimes redundant efforts or potentially wasteful efforts that are taking place where two different groups are sort of working on the same thing, expending taxpayer dollars on stuff that really they should be collaborating on and maximizing their efforts. And the other aspect is even if there's not redundancy, that it's important in the general research to application arena that the groups that might transfer some of these technology projects to operations learn about them as early as possible. And in order for that to happen, there's got to be a greater awareness of what's going on sort of in the early stages. So one of the hopes for is the establishment of this repository that contains a large bulk of the projects going on in NOAA, that sort of situational awareness will be enhanced across the board, both for the developers who are working to bring new things to bear on NOAA's operations, as well as the groups that are maintaining operational systems that would eventually receive these sorts of new innovations.
Can I ask the question now?
Could you hold off? Yeah. The second goal for this is more specific, and that is to allow the owners of NOAA R&D projects to input their project data to a central location in compliance with this NOAA Administrative Order 216-105, which governs the whole research to applications process in NOAA, and to participate in what is the FY15 Research to Applications Performance Measure Pilot. So the NOAA Research Council has been attempting to address how do we measure the performance in this R2A or R2O arena across the board and has blessed a pilot project for FY15 to attempt to do this. This is actually the second pilot that the Research Council has kicked off, and it's more ambitious than the first. So this pilot is going to make exclusive use of this projects repository in the VLab in order to execute its mission. So let me go to the next slide to give you a bit more background. So you may ask, what is R2A? And this is defined actually in this administrative order that I referenced in the previous slide. And the definition of it is the following. So the transition of research and development to application means one of three things, or possibly a combination of these three things. Research to operations, which is the transition to operations, either to NOAA operations or to the operations of external partners and agencies. It can mean R2C, or the transition to commercial applications via patents, licenses, CRADAs, etc. And then there's another category which is kind of a catch-all category called R2U, or the transition to other uses. And examples of those are policy and regulations, resource management, public education, and outreach. And it is, when you look into this third category, it's pretty surprising how much goes on in NOAA that actually fits into that other category, where you're providing some sort of development research that is used in a definite way, but it does not fit into either of the previous categories, the R2O or the R2C. Next slide, please. So there are sort of ways you can look at these three categories in terms of transition models. In the case of research to operations, the model that I think, or the way to describe this best is the sort of the pass the baton model, where you have a research and development unit, maybe a NOAA research lab, that develops some new technology or innovation and brings it to a level of technical maturity where it's ready to test in a NOAA test bed or in some NOAA operational system. And it's agreed that it's successful in those tests and that it should be transitioned to NOAA operations. If there's a budget to do so, then the research unit that developed it perhaps works with the operational unit, which will take over responsibility for it in a very orchestrated sort of a handoff that includes a very detailed transition plan with milestones and deliverables that must be executed very closely in order to be successful. And if it's not, then the baton is dropped and the transition is unsuccessful. The R2C follows a tech transfer model, which is governed exclusively by legislation, federal legislation in this arena in patents and CRADAs and licenses. And NOAA has a technology partnerships office which is the sole source of this information and in NOAA. And so if you're interested in this, I would go to their webpage. You can Google it and find out more. But that model is very well defined. It's defined by law, actually, and people who are engaged in it follow those procedures specifically. And then in the third category, this is rather undefined because there really is no model, but you could say that there's sort of two flavors to this. One is sort of the letter in the mail kind of a model where someone develops something with a kind of target audience of stakeholders in mind. Examples of this is sort of like the climate assessments where there are, targets are governments who might institute policies based on these climate assessments and are actually awaiting these types of reports. Or the sort of the model that's no model is the message in the bottle where some research or development is completed, but there is no really, there's really no target, and you just sort of throw it in the ocean and see what happens, and then somebody may pick it up and use it. Next slide, please. So the real concern in NOAA and this concern is growing, is measuring the performance of NOAA's R&D, what I'm calling, and this should be parenthetical, ecosystem, with respect to research to application. And what I mean by ecosystem is that in NOAA we have about 12,000 employees, we have 5 line offices, we have 7 research labs, 16 cooperative institutes, hundreds of operational systems, and hundreds of R&D units which develop new science and technology. And this ecosystem has served NOAA very well over the years. There in fact is kind of a collection of ecosystems. There may be sort of the weather ecosystem, R&D weather system. There's the ocean R&D ecosystem, etc. And these, basically, the idea is that new things are developed in the research arena and based on requirements driven by the operations. And there's sort of a loosely knit collaboration that takes place, and eventually these new things are implemented into NOAA's operational mission and improve the services that we deliver to the taxpaying public. So care and feeding of this system is essential, and you want to maintain healthy research labs and healthy operational systems. But there's no monolithic enterprise, one path that fits all. It's really a collection of many different paths to application, and that's what sort of takes place. But the point is that however you want to describe what's going on, we want to have a way to measure the success or lack thereof in NOAA in order to justify the budgets, because this is really the most important mission NOAA has, is to deliver these science and technology innovations into our collective mission operations in order to have positive outcomes and benefits to, again, the American taxpayers. Next slide. So the NAO that I referenced earlier has a framework which is described, which is based on the idea of a technical readiness level or technology readiness level. This is a concept that was initially brought into this arena by the NASA and has since been adopted to some extent by DOD and is now being adopted by NOAA. And the idea is that you measure technical maturity of different projects using this sort of a level system where roughly you can categorize the lower levels as kind of research, the middle levels 3 to 4 as development, demonstration is sort of 5 to 8, and then finally application, or the last level is the final target. And so this provides a way, a common language, a common framework that we can describe what's going on in NOAA, no matter what the type of R&D project is, and gets us in, at least in a way, to a posture that allows us to attempt to see what's going on in our R&D ecosystem and see if it's working or not working, or how efficient it's working or not. Next slide. So to give you an idea for this, so one way to say sort of an effective realization of this framework would be that you have this kind of pyramid structure where the base of the pyramid is very wide. You have lots of projects that are at the lower levels, sort of prototypes and things that don't cost much, that are the result of ideas that are brought in through NOAA's science, bench scientists, et cetera, and operational folks. But only a certain percentage of those, say 20%, actually move to the next level, because as you move up the framework, it becomes increasingly more costly. So say 20% of those actually go into a development phase, and then maybe 50% of those move into a demonstration phase in either a NOAA test bed or a proving ground sort of environment. But if they're successful in a demonstration phase, you would like to believe that, and technically mature and ready for operations, that 100% of those would be smoothly transitioned into operations. So this would be sort of an effective picture that you could hope for. that last phase, when things are technically mature, that we move them all in quickly and efficiently into operation so that the expected benefits are realized. Next slide. On the other hand, the other extreme is sort of an ineffective model where you start out again with a very wide base at the research level, but then you move very rapidly from a large percentage of those move into a development phase, and another large percentage of those move into demonstration. But the last mile, so to speak, is very inefficient, that only a small, tiny percentage of the things that are technically ready and mature actually are transition to operation. So that would be sort of like a bottleneck model. This is very inefficient and costly because what you end up doing is that projects which are at that demonstration level sort of have to be maintained, or they sort of stagnate and never move into operations, but are maintained sometimes by research labs, et cetera, for a long time, which in turn diminishes the amount that they can, their budgets in terms of innovating and creating new things. So this is what we would not like to see. But the reality is we have no idea what's going on in NOAA, and that's a problem. So it's a problem, and it's a problem that's realized at the highest levels in NOAA, both by the Undersecretary and the NOAA Chief Scientist and the NOAA Research Council and many, many others. So given that, we are embarking on a pilot project in order to determine at the grassroots level, sort of project by project, what is the picture that's taking place in NOAA? What does it look like? Is it more like the effective model, or is it more like this ineffective? And once we understand what's going on, then we can begin to baseline metrics with the idea that we could develop sort of targets for goals and how to improve, et cetera. But until we know what's going on, we really can't say. So, and the only way we can know what's going on is to understand at the project level, which is historically the one level that is not collected in NOAA in terms of what's going on. So funds are generally appropriated to the line offices, and they're tracked at a program level, but nobody really knows what's going on at the project level. So I think that's the last slide, John. Yes. So so the way that we're going to begin to try to reveal this picture in NOAA is through this pilot program this year in FY15, where we're going to ask each line office and project owners to input their project level data, including the TRL levels, into our project repository, and we're going to start tracking to see what's going on. So the remainder of the presentation here, I'm going to hand this over to Mike Giebler to provide a demonstration of the project repository, which is where project owners will go to input their data, as well as where anybody will be able to go to see what's available in the repository itself. So, Mike, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, I'm going to let you take it over. And you
Okay.
may want to increase the magnification of your screen a bit.
All right, give me just a second. Does that look a little bit better? Okay, so this is the projects repository application we've been working on, and the goals of this is to collect data and then display the data and do some metrics on it and things like that. So I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of what we've got so far. Potentially, there could be quite a few projects in here, so we've tried to put a lot of focus on sorting and searching to try to sift through all the different projects that could be out here. So in this gridded area, all of the, or most of the column headings are sortable. So if you see this double arrow here, it will, those that have that double arrow, you can click on it and it'll sort them either ascending or descending after you click on those. So that's just one way of being able to sort through these items. We've also added an additional sort up here in this upper part. This upper part is a navigation bar to help you get to different areas, but there's a sort by, and we've added some additional fields that don't show up in the grid. In particular, the create date field is pretty useful, especially if you are somebody that has just recently entered a project, and right after you enter it, that will sort in the default order, but this way it allows you to sort that last created project to the top and easily find that. We also have a simple search feature which just kind of searches through the basic areas of the data. Most notably right now we have it searching through the project name and the description. Just a quick example of this. I know there's one out here. You can see that I typed in fish and got the results of this sample project here, and then I can drill down into it, get some more information about it. Additionally, we have a more advanced search to help sort through these, and you can see right now we have 4 fields that or 3 fields we're searching through. We're going to add some additional ones too. Pretty much most of these column headings will be searchable. And just a quick example of this. It'll just look in these 2 fields. Right now I'm saying match any, so that means if any project has either this or this in it, it'll return, and you can see with that we get quite a few, because you can see we have project in the name, test in the description over here. But if we go back and put that same criterion here and change it to all, which means both must match, that will really narrow down your search. In this case, we just had one that matched where the project was in the name and test was in the description. In the grid itself, we try to put as much information that's collected that's reasonable to put up front without causing it to shrink too much and things like that. So we have the project name, the description, the different transition organizations. Also, a user might have some documents associated with this project, and they have an opportunity to add those documents. And we shrink them initially, but you can expand those and see what those documents are, and you can actually view those right from here, clicking the download option, and it'll open any of those attached documents that are attached to that project for you to view right there. Also, a project might have a transition plan associated with it, and we have an area where the project owner can add that transition document to the project, and it's viewable in the grid here. And again, that can be downloaded right from there. And people that are out here navigating, if you are the project owner or the person that created the project, you can go ahead and edit it right from this option. So this top one here is this person is the owner of. The second one here, the person that's logged in is not the owner, so he just has a view option and then an option to look at the TRL history. So here I'll show you real quick on that first one. They could go right into the edit mode and edit the project. Say as it's gone by the technical readiness level has changed, they can go in here and change it from, say, 4 to a 5, and click Save. And then that's finished. Let me show you that one again. The TRL history will show up as a table, and anytime it changes, we record that so that we can have a running history of what those levels were for this project over the course of time. Also in our display, we have basically another page that will allow you to go where we're kind of doing some metrics on this and quickly let you see how many projects are at different technical readiness levels, also what percentage of them are at the different levels. And that's what we've done here. We've created some reports out here they can go to. Right now we have 4 of them. The first top 2 are related to the technical readiness level. The one on the left is each of the 9 TRL levels. And it just, with our test data, shows how many are at each level. The one next to it on the right is basically the same thing, but only it's percentages. So instead of a count, it's a 12% are at this technical readiness level 3. I don't know if you can see that pop up, but when you hover over it, those will pop up. The other reports we have are related to the phases. As Steve pointed out, those different TRL levels are related to different phases. So if you look on the right here, the 44%, those are those at the demonstration phase with our test data, level 5 through 8. And with these reports, these can be exported if you want to. This is exported as a PDF. That way you can print this out if you wanted to, and things like that. And I'm stuck here for some reason. There we go. So that's kind of it for all the viewing stuff. Let me just real quick, show you how a new project would be added. And at the main page here, you can go, we have a quick link there just to add a project. Some fields are required. In steps 1 through 3, they have some required fields. And just a note, we do grab the person that's logged in. We get their information to fill in the project owner and the project email address. Those are 2 fields that we can get from the portal here. And those aren't always necessarily the project owners. The project owner may designate somebody else to do this, so they can change that if they wanted to at this point. And then this screen, step 3, has most of the details here, what line office, and then the different organizations that you pick for these areas. And selecting the target system and what technical readiness level this is currently at. And at this point, if there's a transition plan, user can designate what date that transition's planned for. And they can also, if need be, they could go ahead and attach a file that specifies that transition plan right here. And the last step is if you want to tag or categorize this for different things, this is taking advantage of our portal technology that we're using, the LifeRay portal, and it helps with searching and things like that later on if you want to, and some other portlets that take advantage of the tags and the categories. And that's all it is to adding a new project. And as we showed before, this might be hard to find, but we can sort by create date, and it should come right up to the top. And there it is, the demo project I just added. And right here on the status column, it shows it's in pending status. What we've done is on the detail step, the line office determines who approves these before they get put out for public viewing. So there's a little bit of a workflow. We're again taking advantage of our LifeRay portal to do that. One other thing I did want to show you is let me go with this one here that I've already started. If for some reason you don't see one of your organizations that you want to add this to, we're allowing you to just go ahead and add one right here. There's a quick link there. And it takes you back to the project you were working on, and now that demo organization that we just added is available for use to be used in these drop-down lists here. And we also have a similar feature here with the target system. If your target system isn't showing up here, you can add a target system for your use to attach to a project.
Okay, Mike, that's a great overview, quick overview, and I think people get a sense for the basics of it. Obviously, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can, as a user, how you might approach this table to search for things and find things. But the design for adding a project was the intent was to keep it as simple as possible and basically not take more than like 5 to 10 minutes for somebody who owned a project to go to this interface and add their project. And there's no financial data that's being asked for, and really it's quite simple. So we're attempting to keep the bar as low as possible so that we get as much participation. The idea is, and there's going to be a rollout probably on a line office by line office basis, but every project in NOAA, which could be a considerable number, would be expected to enter in this database. And so those pie charts that Mike showed would start to be representative of what's really going on. And that would be a big step forward because, as I said at the outset, we really don't know what the picture looks like, but we need to find out what it is. And this is the easiest and least expensive way that we have been able to put forth to try to do that. And if it's successful, this would endure, and year after year we would see what's going on. And there's lots of other data that's useful. This is just sort of the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, or the tip of the pyramid. But we can get a better idea for how long, on average, it takes from stage TRL1 to TRL9 across the board, or looking at a line office perspective. So that's really, if there's really a wealth of information from tracking this small set of project metrics, if you will, and we're hoping that the picture may be very very favorable once it's put together, especially considering NOAA's budget vis-a-vis the budget, say, for a larger agency like the Department of Defense or the FAA. So with that, I think we'll stop and take questions. So if you have a question and you're online, please use your raise your hand feature, and we'll unmute you so you can ask your question directly, or you could also use the chat feature. So John, do we have? No
one has raised their hand.
All right, Dennis, you had a question.
First of all, is it going to be a requirement that all projects be entered in here, mandated?
It actually, yes, there already is a requirement in the NAO. The problem with it is that there's been no way to actually gather that information. So the answer is yes to that question. And it's the framework is set out so that we're not just interested in the the highly technically mature projects, but actually things that are much lower down into sort of the prototype phase or even earlier. So the idea is that it's quite a large scope and the full picture.
Well, what constitutes a project? I mean, projects can be pretty loose.
Well, there's a definition. There's a definition. I can't quote it for you verbatim, but it's basically it's a temporary. That's number one. A project doesn't go on forever. It has a set of milestones.
It's formally defined.
It's formally defined. It will now be defined by this technical readiness level, and that the details of that are available online. I think we've got those up there. But it sort of progresses on something that's been tested in a laboratory environment, and then in a quasi-operational environment, and then finally an operational end-to-end testing. It's a logical progression, and it also means that you would have, if there's a large program, may have many sub-projects, and each one is an individual project. So something like, I don't know, the GOES-R program, right? You wouldn't just have one project called GOES-R. It would be a collection of subcomponents, and if you had an upgrade to a model, that would be a new project, right? You wouldn't have to replace the entire model. If you put in a new module, that module would be a project because it has a beginning and an end, and the end is that it is implemented into an operational system or some other endpoint. So the scope is very large.
So who's going to be sending out? Who's going to be tasked with collecting all this data from all the linos? Well,
the way that this is set up is that the project owners will be asked to go in and they will input their data.
Who's going to?
There's the first asking will go out in a memo from their line office. Bob, you had a question?
Well, in that way, then, things that we have normally considered projects in MDL would be radically subdivided, because otherwise the MOS enterprise and so forth is in all phases. Things move through and so forth.
That's right.
I guess another comment is it seems like that the organizations that have an implementation capability and are expected to do it would certainly have the upper hand in this, because, I mean, you think about things in OAR that get developed, techniques and so on. As far as implementation, unless you define implementation some other way, they don't get in because nobody implements them.
Well, interesting you would describe it like that, because the idea here is that there's no, per se, it's everybody's problem, right? So if a research lab has put something in, and they are the owners of it. Some projects may wilt on the vine. They may be terminated before their transition, but we want to know about those before, regardless. And so if there's not a receiving entity, then that might happen. Or if they got to a test bed and were proven to not be successful because the intended results weren't realized when they actually got to a test bed, then of course it would end. So the states of the projects are active, meaning it's being worked on, dormant, meaning it's not, terminated could be one, and completed. So the point is that we would like to know sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly of what's going on, and not everything that gets into this system will be successful or will be transitioned into either of those three categories. The things that you often hear stories or anecdotal expressions that projects languish. They get to something and nobody picks them up, or there's no way to operationalize them. They need funding to do that. This hopefully will provide a better reality of what is happening. Maybe those are just in the minority, and most of the things do make it into some sort of transition. But the idea is very comprehensive. It's to capture everything, and essentially the hope is that this will be a good story, and we will know if successful. We will know in any given year or any time frame how many individual projects advance from one TRL level to another, or one development cycle, say from the development to demonstration in a given time frame. And especially that last 8 to 9, that's really what we define as transition. How many or what percentage actually do in a given fiscal year or some other length of time.
So the goal is to capture all extant projects in all of NOAA in this database.
That's right.
And to me, it sounds a bit like OSIT, or like that card that was supposed to replace it. But I guess.
Although this doesn't care. There's no approval other than the line office person approving, which is just kind of a quality sanity check. There's no. If things move along rapidly, this is just to track their progress. It doesn't stop anything. It's completely independent of either any line office's process. It's merely to track sort of a movie, if you will, or a snapshot if you went in at what's currently going on in NOAA. Doesn't care who's funding it, what's funding it, how much it's being funded, or what process it's following to move along this path.
So there are no gates or something like that?
There's no gate, no. It's completely reliant on the project owner to submit the data. So it's on their honor system, more or less.
And he alone can stop it at any time?
Yes. Yes. Well, there is a line office approver, so that it means they could be told to stop it, I suppose. So obviously there could be red flags that could come up if you see some project that's been in it for 10 years and hasn't advanced a single TRL level. You might say, that's curious, and go investigate. But the real goal here is at the NOAA. It's not intended to be It's really to look at NOAA as a large agency involved in this effort, to see what's going on across NOAA. So the impact of one individual project on this is going to be very small, but the hope is that the big corporate picture, the measures of this ecosystem, means something year after year, and that we get a better idea of what's going on across NOAA. So to some extent, we're far less concerned about any individual project as what's the bulk of things. I mean,
you will be concerned about line offices.
well, that's in the nature of NOAA, yeah. But some of the, increasingly there are cross-line office projects or multi-line office projects, and those will be included in this as well.
This will certainly foster that.
Yeah.
That may be the idea behind it.
Well, partly.
Are these projects searchable by category? I didn't notice. Is there some categorization scheme that, like, these projects would be entered as, it's a satellite project, it's a weather radar project, or
yeah, well, Mike went over that fairly quickly. There's it can be categorized by the goals of the NOAA strategic plan. That's one thing. But then there are these tags feature where you can tag a project with some sort of descriptive label, be it hydrology or satellite, and every project owner can insert those different tags and sort of like a Google function. John, do we have any questions?
Brian Maritzky has a question, and he's unmuted.
Brian?
Actually, this is Ken Johnson. Brian's here too, and he's got a question as well, but I'll start off. First off, our original question was about the definition of projects, but I think he kind of covered that. I noticed in some of the fields you had there, it was the target system. Now, some projects aren't necessarily hardware-oriented. In other words, some projects could produce knowledge of some sort that could be applied in the workplace. So I presume that's not a required field in that not all projects either produce data or produce software, that kind of thing.
If it's a R2O project, then we're required to know what system that this would be implemented on. How does it get into operation? If it's some the other category, I guess other uses would doesn't require that target system.
Okay. All right. Also, transition to operations. There's, you can transition something into operations, be it software or knowledge or whatever. Is there going to be any kind of way of following up to see what kind of impact this has had, a particular project outcome has had on operations? I kind of equate this to the old training question. You can do training, but has it had an impact on performance? So just simply because something got into operations, got on, in the case of the Weather Service, got into AWIPS, despite best intentions, it may not, be as effective or have the impact you wanted. Is there any way in this system to be able to follow up on that or measure that?
The answer to that, Ken, is no. That's of course, a very important question, and one that many people have considered. But we're not going to be able to track that. That's out of scope. But it certainly is a valid question, and I think, at least in the case of Weather Service, it's something that we have never done and probably should do. Because for the various, the way you've alluded to this, I mean, it is an open question of when something is implemented, does it have the intended outcome? I mean, hopefully, if we're more disciplined in using these NOAA test beds and say the Weather Service's operational proving ground, there'll be fewer surprises, because I think the intent is, and of course the intent is far away from reality at this point, is that you would say put something in the proving ground with real forecasters, and they would run it through its paces and say, oh yeah, this is going to, we can see that if we get this in our office, we're going to be able to do this, that, and the other thing. And when it does get in their offices, they indeed do make use of it. whereas before, you know, we didn't have that, and we had less of an idea. So, you know, it's extremely valid question, but the answer to your question, no, there's no way in this system that we're going to track outcomes and whether or not the transition actually had the effect that it was hoped for.
Okay, appreciate you showing us this and, you know, giving the demo. I'm going to pass this over to Brian, who has a couple of questions.
Yeah, I'll start with one question was you kind of touched on already. When is there some sort of announcement that's going to come out? And then, like you were saying that it's going to be up to the project owner to implement. Is there going to be anything beyond that, or just some sort of announcement saying, let's start hearing about projects?
So we're going to attempt a line office by line office rollout, and it would take a memo form. Basically, it would be a joint memo from the NOAA Chief Scientist, Dr. Spinrad, and probably either the AA or maybe the line office transition manager, who is, in the case of the Weather Service, my boss, Mike Farah. And in that memo, it would say, you know, define who the project owners are, what they need to do, where they need to go, and any further guidance that would be needed in order to carry out the basic adding of an individual project. And that's the approach we're going to take. We may do...
Steve, is it a memo to all staff, or is it a memo to certain staff?
We haven't determined that yet. It may be unfeasible to target it to a sector of staff and may have to go out all hands, but it would be really be targeted to project owners. The problem is that there's project owners cover a wide spectrum of Weather Service employees anyway, and I'm sure the same applies for the other line offices. So we haven't determined that completely yet. But we will provide heads up to the individual line offices and sort of we're going to do our darndest not to blindside anybody.
So you'll send something to like managers beforehand or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. What time frame are you looking?
Probably early April. Not long.
Okay. I had one other more technical question. Mike showed the page with the projects on it. Is there a more specific page associated with each project? So if somebody wants to provide more than just the description, they want to provide, I mean, I know you showed attachments, but if they wanted to provide links and there was maybe a place to discuss the project or something like that, would there be a separate page for that? Or could there be a separate page?
I'm going to attempt to answer first, and then I'll let Mike jump in. I think there are the attachments. That's one, as you already mentioned, and a transition plan. And in the description box, I think you can include URLs in there, and you could include reference to if it's there's a VLab community or something else in that description. Mike, is that true?
I believe so. It's not something that I've actually tested, so it'd be something I'd have to test. But if not, that's something that can be implemented pretty easily in that field.
Yeah, Brian, a strategic goal here would be make this as seamless as possible. So if there was a VLab project, there was a VLab community that was behind these individual project entries, that we would want to sort of make it transparent and allow people to sort of go back and forth. But at this initial stage, it's probably going to be through that description box where that would happen.
Okay, great. So it could link to a community or something like that, and you could have maybe like a blog or something like that.
Yes.
All right. I think that answers our question.
Thank you. John, do we have other questions?
Yes, Mike Hall has a question. He's been unmuted.
Hey, Mike, you're unmuted.
Yeah, thank you. You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. No, I was in this this spreadsheet we're looking at. If you think of the target system, in our case of NESDIS, it's kind of an oddball one, where the target system is, say it's GOES-R or JPSS. I'm just trying to get my hands around what that means for us, because in STAR we will be developing applications, and we will go through development to demonstration, and it will be applied at some point. But it's not that these individual things themselves are important. When the satellite flies and the checkout happens, then these projects, and there could be dozens and dozens of them, product by product and so forth. So I'm trying to, how do we, is it expected that we would report what we do in the context of one of the acquisition programs like satellites or GOES-R or JPSS, and get it into this database as R2O projects?
I think
it's a rhetorical question in a way. I just don't know how to do it.
Yeah, so let me try to answer this. So I think this is one of the things we want to learn from this pilot. This is why it's a pilot. But the intent, I think, would be to try to capture the big target systems. So if something is intended to fly on a satellite, that satellite is a target system. If it's designed to run on a ground processing system, then the ground processing system, whatever it's called, would be the target system. So I don't know what those are for NESDIS, and there may be hundreds of them, but that's the intent. Where will this thing, whether it's a piece of software or an instrument, where will it be operational and maintained, assuming that it's going to be maintained for some time? So we will not know what those are for NESDIS, and so that's why we put this ability to add them on the fly as the different project owner says, well, my system's not in there, and they enter it in, and then it is. So on top of just knowing what the projects are, this almost by default, this web interface and database is going to build a collection of operational target systems within NOAA.
Okay, one of the, yeah, I'm sorry, but one of the things, like within these programs, like JPS, we're already tracking all these little projects, in actually gruesome detail. I mean, I'm sure we could translate to this, but I mean, we could spend forever, just throwing all what could be qualified as projects into this system. I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm not criticizing or.
Yeah, well, that's the reality, and I think, again, I think that's why we want to make this a pilot, to see how feasible it is for certain things, and we may come back after the end of the fiscal year and say we need to rethink how we do this. But the only way we thought that we could get this off the ground was to bring it down to this level where a project owner, again, defined, almost self-identified, would go into this interface and enter in. Now, there may be one person may own many projects depending on how you look at it, and maybe that's a huge job, and maybe that's not feasible. But somehow, some way, that's the intent. And the idea, remember, I think we shouldn't forget this, is that we're trying to capture, in a sense, the good work that's going on in NOAA and get credit for it. So this is the hope. This is my aspiration, if you will, that the outcome of this is just by capturing that, we will have a good story to tell to whoever, and so it's worth making that effort. And I mean, later on, we may consider ways that we could sort of import in a whole bunch of data into this without having individual project owners enter it. That might be an outcome. I don't know. But at this point, this is. But the default will be that Mike Kalb will do all of them for NESDIS.
No. We're trying to get John involved in this, Mr. Pereira.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Another couple of questions. You want all these projects centered. Do you have a time frame for when that should be all completed by?
Not yet. Not yet. We're still, this will be part of the rollout strategy, I think. You know, realistically, we're not going to get 100%. We know that. We're going to try to encourage and facilitate as much as we can. And so I doubt we're going to put a hard and fast deadline in this. Again, by the end of September, we'll have a better idea of where we're at. And the other thing, of course, we'll never know what 100% is because
Right.
this is the first time we've actually tried to do this.
So at the end of September, this will be this project, this pilot project itself will be assessed.
Yes. John, do we have any other questions?
No, I think we've exhausted everybody's questions.
Well, I'm definitely exhausted.
Well, I'm largely responsible for that.
All right, well, I appreciate people's time, and if you got further questions, please send it to John or I, John Chattel or myself, and we'll be happy to answer those. But this is, again, this is a preview in a sense. We want to start expanding exposure, get people thinking, and move on forward, because I think the only way we're going to know how well this works or doesn't is to actually try it. So that's the goal. So with that, I think we will sign off. And next month, what do we got, John?
We have the science behind the National Blend of Models.
Okay. The science, we're going to be talking, this is a Weather Service project, to what the actual science approach being taken to the National Blend of Models project. So that'll be coming up in April. So hope to see you then, and thanks everyone. Have a good rest of your day.